by recording the phone line despite its unrecorded label. That ruling ended months of litigation. Before 10 a.m. on the next business day, Monday, May 27th, a private IT contractor working for the city emailed Klimas, the city's IT director, this, quote, 3407 recordings are gone. Check them today. They have been purged. End of quote.
Purged. Gone.
Evidence. So an independent private contractor did this work over the weekend immediately after the ruling from the federal judge. That's how quick the action was on this, folks.
Yeah, that's how absolutely revealing it was. You want to talk corruption.
Mm-hmm. In an email to Target 8, the city attorney's office said there were no pending FOIA requests at the time and that the purge followed the city's schedules for retaining records. The city attorney said in the email, quote, the City of Grand Rapids FOIA response team took all reasonable steps to analyze and respond to FOIA requests that came in following the litigation hold lift on May 24, 2019. End of quote.
Darren, isn't the recording you just played something that WOOD TV would love to get their hands on right now?
Well, no, they've already got their hands on it. They're talking about there's possibly hundreds of hours worth of more recordings other than this one.
And they all went down.
And they all got erased. But Klimas told Target 8 that even though his department had purged the police computers, that didn't mean the recordings were gone. He told Target 8, quote, they got deleted, but they don't go away. We started the purge process, but that doesn't mean it's gone. End of quote.
What does that mean?
You know where Klimas is? He's now the IT director for Ottawa County. He said he took his direction from the city attorney's office. As the purge continued, Klimas sent an email to Assistant City Manager Doug Matthews. Quote, note, all recordings were FOIA'd. Was a court order to release them. They are all public. Thought you might want to know. End of quote. Klimas told Target 8 that the email was meant to inform the city manager's office that the city had already fulfilled earlier FOIA requests when it released some recordings to WOOD TV 8 and MLive in 2017, MLive being the Grand Rapids Press, the local newspaper here. Emails on May 28th show the purge was continuing, including this message from Assistant City Manager Matthews to the IT Director and to Grand Rapids Police Department Captain David Schnurstein. Quote, as far as the remaining recordings go, we're clear to proceed. End of quote. Those remaining recordings were unrelated to the litigation. Also on May 28th, the day into the purge, the ACLU emailed its FOIA to the city for all recordings made at any time on Police Line 3407 and all records including emails about the phone line. But the next day, records showed that the purge continued. So they completely, I'm going to stop here real quick. They completely ignored the FOIA request from the ACLU.
I don't know about you folks. I mean, this is a local story. People out in New Mexico or down in Virginia right now, they don't know much probably about this whole issue. But aren't you tired? I don't care what part of the country you're from. Aren't you tired of these agencies having these receptacles of secret information where you just pump in, whether it's the White House that had the secret server, and I'm going to call it a secret server, that took this phone call and like the Ghostbusters just put it in a container, right? Mm-hmm. Just got rid of it. They're all over the place. You're ubiquitous. Our police department down here is symptomatic with the one in Philadelphia where they've proven now have purposely placed thousands of drug drops on people in Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. And when you go to try to expose these actions, what do you get?
Stonewalled.
You get stonewalled and you turn around and they erase their own evidence.
Yeah. Folks, if you think this is just a unique problem to the city of Grand Rapids, Michigan, you better think again. This is happening everywhere.
Yes, it is.
Let me continue. On May 29th, Assistant City Manager Matthews emailed Klimas, the IT Director, quote, hey, Paul, can you provide an update on the process and timing for disposal of records as discussed? Want to provide Mark a specific update. End of quote. Here's how Klimas responded. Quote, disposal of recordings of 3407 is underway. Since they reside on a city server, these records are recoverable for 14 days within backups. End of quote. The former IT director told Target 8 that the backups were kept on a city server at data storage company Switch in Gaines Township. You know, the big pyramid out there. Here's what he said. Quote, for 14 days, those recordings are somewhere at Switch. End of quote. In an email, the former IT director told Target 8 that he asked the city attorney's office on June 3, several days into the purge, if he should try to recover the recordings, but that he was told not to. On June 4, before those 14 days were up, Target 8 filed a FOIA for all recordings from that line, similar to the FOIA filed by the ACLU. Instead of trying to recover all the recordings, the city responded to the ACLU and WOOD TV FOIAs with recordings it had already released. Aukerman, the ACLU attorney, said, quote, the thing is there was a 14-day backup, so when those requests came in, that information was still very much there, still very much available, and still very much something they were required legally to produce. End of quote. Michigan Press Association General Counsel Robin Luce Herman said she believes the purge violated the state FOIA law.
Oh, yeah.
At Target 8's request, the MPA attorney reviewed the city emails. Luce Herman said, quote, I think that it is an unusual case. It raises questions that I think need to be answered. End of quote. Aukerman said she had planned to pick the dates of high-profile incidents and listen to see if police used the secretly recorded line. Aukerman said, quote, it's possible there were recordings about criminal cases. It's possible there were recordings about very important community incidents. There were probably things on those recordings that were hugely embarrassing to the city, which is probably why they were destroyed. End of quote. Mm-hmm. Now she wants to know who in the city pushed for the purge. Aukerman said, quote, the first step here is really for the city to explain to the community what happened here. Why was this information destroyed? On whose recommendation? By whose orders? And what was on those recordings that they were so afraid that the public would hear? End of quote. While the city manager is listed as a recipient of some of the emails, it's not clear what role he played. Records show that the city manager sent one email about the purge on May 28th to the assistant city manager and the city attorney. He wrote, quote, please advise how and when that would happen. End of quote. However, the city redacted the subject line and most of the text from that email when releasing records to Target 8. The city also redacted subject lines from some emails. The ACLU's Aukerman added, quote, when you look at these redactions, you do wonder, why black out subject lines? Why black out all of these names? End of quote. The city manager refused to answer specific questions about the purge. He told Target 8, quote, my answer to you regarding this legal issue is that you should speak to the city attorney's office regarding the decision that was made regarding this case. End of quote. Mm-hmm. He told Target 8 the city attorney Anita Hitchcock was responsible for the purge. Washington added, quote, it was a legal matter and the decisions that occurred regarding that was the result of the city attorney's office and the city attorney's decision, and I would suggest you talk to her. End of quote. When WOOD TV asked why the recordings were erased, the city attorney said, quote, because we have a state-authorized retention period, we just followed the retention schedule.
Sure, that was
End of quote.
Just being punctual. Good job.
The city attorney refused to answer any other questions, including questions about the 14-day backup. In an email statement to Target 8, the city attorney said the city could not legally release the recordings. She wrote this, quote, the federal court's decision that the recordings were inadvertent meant that they were not public records subject to FOIA. End of quote. Oh, so now they're saying that's not public record. Yet they have an email that says it's all public. Really, which is it? It can't be both. It's one or the other. However, Target 8's review of the federal court ruling shows the judge did not address the Freedom of Information Act. In fact, if the judge had ruled against the city and found it had violated federal wiretapping laws, those calls could not have been released. U.S. District Judge Paul L. Maloney wrote in his ruling, quote, the Federal Wiretap Act generally prohibits individuals from intentionally intercepting wire, oral, or electronic communication and also prohibits the use and disclosure of the contents of the communications obtained in violation of the statute. End of quote. Yep, this is all right in River City, Jack. Gotta love it.
Yeah, in this program, has listed chronologically, if anybody's been paying attention, the sins of this department, from the overemphasis on minors being stopped and checked for ID, to guns pulled on teens over in a park, to now erasing evidence that proves they were trying to save this official's skin. Had it been a black kid, 16 years of age, he'd been on the ground with a taser pointed at him.
Or worse. Might not have been a taser.
Yeah. It's and this is the city, by the way, where we have had an alignment between the cops, that's the term the protesters use, and ISIS. And if you go to any of their protests, that's what they chant repeatedly. Cops love ICE, or ICE love cops. They work hand in hand. We had a lieutenant call ISIS on it was just a
Call
stop.
ICE, not ISIS.
Excuse me, yes, right. Freudian slip. They called ICE over on a Marine, a decorated Marine who had his ID, had his citizenship. He was a bona fide U.S. citizen and decorated war soldier, and turned into ICE.
Yeah.
Good old Grand Rapids.
Yep. You just got to love it.
But they have a hell of a softball team, GRPD, and they play the minority kids every year, so I guess things are all right.
Yeah, whatever. Oh boy,
Greta time.
I want to move right into this. Yeah, let's go into Greta Thunberg ripping world leaders apart at the UN climate debate. You got to hear this, folks. I've got this clip. This runs about 4.5 minutes. I'm just going to play it all the way through. Sit back and enjoy the 16-year-old who should be leading this world, Greta Thunberg.
My message is that we'll be watching you. This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you? For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away and come here saying that you're doing enough when the politics and solutions needed are still nowhere in sight? You say you hear us and that you understand the urgency. But no matter how sad and angry I am, I do not want to believe that. Because if you really understood the situation and still kept on failing to act, then you would be evil, and that I refuse to believe. The popular idea of cutting our emissions in half in 10 years only gives us a 50% chance of staying below 1.5 degrees and the risk of setting off irreversible chain reactions beyond human control. 50% may be acceptable to you, but those numbers do not include tipping points, most feedback loops, additional warming hidden by toxic air pollution, or the aspects of equity and climate justice. They also rely on my generation sucking hundreds of billions of tons of your CO2 out of the air with technologies that barely exist. So a 50% risk is simply not acceptable to us, we who have to live with the consequences. To have a 67% chance of staying below a 1.5 degrees of global temperature rise, the best odds given by the IPCC, the world had 420 gigatons of CO2 left to emit back on January 1st, 2018. Today that figure is already down to less than 350.